Hello guys, and welcome to my new video, and today is going to be a big one. I'm going to be doing my predictions for healers and basically what's happening in patch 10.0.7 in terms of possible Mythic Plus meta, in terms of possible raiding meta. There are some significant changes happening to healers, and I'm going to be doing my, again, prediction rankings, tier lists and all those things, and I'm going to be covering some of the changes, not all of the changes, but the changes that I find to be the most interesting for each healer if they did have anything. But keep in mind, I'm not going to be looking at patch 10.1 because there's a lot of significant changes that are happening. The patch is probably going to be released in a couple of months. There's still a lot of time left. The new tier sets have been revealed. There's more class changes happening, specifically to something like Mistweaver monks. So I'm very confident to say that there will be meta shifting or changes in 10.1. But right now, we're looking at the most recent patch 10.0.7. So let's go and get started. So first of all, we're starting off with the meta for currently 10.05. And again, this is sub-creation data, this is real player information, these are really high keys from 18 to 28, so there is a lot of emphasis on high key pushing and which classes are preferred, but I don't really like this tier list right now. This tier list has been, how do I say, snowballed from the very start of Dragonflight. At the start of Dragonflight, you probably are fully aware that Preservation, Evoker, and Restoration Druid were by far ahead in terms of most content out there, specifically Mythic Plus, and if you didn't play those healers early on, you're probably missing out in terms of damage, in terms of pure throughput and things like that. Over the course of Dragonflight, all of these classes have received buffs, a lot of these classes have received nerfs, and again, Blizzard was trying to bridge the gap, and I think they kind of achieved it to some extent, but the sub-creation data is not going to showcase that because most people are already playing Preservation Evoker, most people are playing Restoration Druid, and there's no reason for them to re-roll from those healers at this given moment. So my initial expectations for patch 10.07 is that sub-creation data or real player information or data-driven information is not going to change all that much. I still think it's going to be somewhat similar because people are not going to be re-rolling, but in 10.1 when you're getting new items, again, you're going to get new item levels, there's going to be more class changes. I am fully, how do I say, I'm quite confident to say that the meta will change in 10.1, we'll have to wait, but right now, I think the community perception will still stay somewhat relevant, but at the end of the video, I will do my own class balance or tier list based on what I think is going to happen or based on what classes are capable of. So let's have a look at the first healer, and this is going to be a healer that I'm most excited, one of the most excited healers for patch 10.07 because they're receiving a plethora of changes, some of them negative, but mostly positive, and that is going to be Restoration Shaman. So Resto Shaman is going to have a lot of freed up points in class tree and spec tree because, for example, improved Lightning Bolt and Call of Thunder, which all increase the damage of your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, they're being removed from your tree, and instead of feeling like, oh crap, my Shaman is not going to deal any more damage, all of those modifiers are being applied to your base abilities, so you're not really losing anything. But there are a few negative things happening to Restoration Shaman. For example, Acid Rain is getting a 20% nerf, which again, I think a lot of people were kind of expecting it because Blizzard has buffed Acid Rain so many times, and I think they did it without really testing it. There are significant nerfs to Wellsprings. Again, it's getting nerfed by 30%, which is a really sad thing for any Resto Shaman who's doing Mythic raiding or any raiding in general, because Wellsprings is a staple of your raid healing or raid healing toolkit, so I think it is pretty sad change. I'm not sure why they're doing that. You can also see that Focus Insight is being removed, and Blizzard's rationale was that they don't want multiple modifiers for healing. And I can see where they're coming from because there are multiple talents that change the power of your heals depending on which spells or the order of the spells you're casting. And on top of that, they're completely reworking Swirling Currents talent. And again, I'm not sure or what was wrong with the old version of Swirling Currents. Again, let me know in the comments how you feel about this change in particular. And in order to compensate for some of these changes, Blizzard is increasing the overall healing of Resto Shaman by a whopping 8%, and I think that is a significant buff to Shamans overall, and there is a plethora of positive changes. For example, there is Tidebringer is coming back from PvP to PvE, and now Tidebringer is going to be something that I think majority of Resto Shamans are going to pick, because not only it's going to reduce the cast time of your chain heal, but also it's going to help you with some of the biggest issues the Resto Shamans have, and that is spread fights. It's going to increase the range of chain heal by a whopping 100%. I think this talent is going to be picked by pretty much all of the Resto Shamans, and I think it's going to make chain heal build, how do I say, pretty interesting choice. But you might be like, hey MadSkillz, I can't really spam chain heal or use chain heal all that much. My mana is kind of, you know, it's not that great. They are helping you with that. They are adding Water Shield in the baseline, and you only have to spend 1 talent point in order to pick up Resurgence. And on top of that, Mana Spring now gives you 350 mana instead of 200. And the good news continue, Ancestral Guidance will now also work with Cloudburst, which means those, how do I say, Resto Shamans who can really ramp properly during their Cloudburst, Ancestral Guidance is going to be a really potent tool, both in raids and Mythic Plus, because Ancestral Guidance is pretty much a must-have. But you might also be like, hey MadSkillz, what about the lack of a tank defensive, especially in Mythic Plus environment? I might have to use Spirit Link a lot of the times just for the tank to survive. Blizzard is kind of listening. They're changing Earth and Harmony to give the person with Earth Shield 6% damage reduction. So you can actually maintain this pretty much 100% of the time on your tank and provide them with 6% damage reduction, which is honestly kind of insane. And on top of that, if you have Elemental Orbit, at least this is my testing from PTR, you can have Earth Shield on yourself, which also gives you 6% damage reduction. So 6% damage reduction to yourself if you maintain Earth Shield on yourself, and 6% damage reduction on a tank if you maintain Earth Shield on them. And I think these changes are going to help you a lot, or at least make you less sad because you don't have a dedicated tank cooldown. And there's a lot of changes that I haven't even talked about here. There's a lot of quality of life improvements. For example, things like Poison Totem now working properly and removing poison or multiple stacks of poison, which is great for something like AA or Academy. And there's a lot of, how do I say, improvements in terms of nodes for your Mana Tide Totem and Healing Tide Totem, which will, again, we'll have to test more to see if they're going to have some sort of play in raids or Mythic Plus. But I genuinely believe the overall changes for Resto Shaman are going to turn out to be as a net positive. I'm really excited about the fact that Ancestral Guidance is working with Cloudburst Totem. This is going to make raiding a lot more fun. It's going to make Mythic Plus a lot more fun. I think there's a lot more choices in your talent tree because you're getting rid of all these, how they say, not needed talents in terms of improved Lightning Bolt, in terms of Call of Thunder, in terms of Water Shield. You're getting that as baseline, and I think it's just going to make Shaman better and better and better. And I think Shaman is going to be directly competing with something like Preservation of Evoker in Mythic Plus content because they're both bringing Bloodlust. And now let's go to Mistweaver Monk. And I think Mistweaver Monk is taking a lot of W's every single week or every second week. There's some positive change happening, whether it's going to be for 10.07 or 10.1. For example, in 10.1, they have announced they're doing a pretty big redesign to Ancient Teachings, which I think is going to be a really big boon for Mistweavers coming into raid environments where you have, again, Ancient Teachings doing AoE healing, and then you're doing a lot of single target healing or triage healing through Vivify because it's also getting buffed. It's only a, how do I say, a positive thing, at least in my eyes. But we're not talking about 10.1, we're talking about 10.07, what's happening in the next patch. So there is buffs to Shadow's Gift. There's going to be a new talent added where there's going to be, how do I say, Shadow's Gift is going to heal 2 additional targets and its cast time is going to be reduced, which means that it can become a really potent group heal, especially in something like Mythic Plus, where it's very popular. Now, Shadow's Gift is also used in raid situations, depending on which boss you're doing, so I think there's a lot of, how to say, emphasis on these new talents being brought in and these talents being improved. You look at things like your Yulon or your Red Crane. Now, if you activate this, this also is going to give Chi Cocoons to 5 targets, and that Chi Cocoon strength, at least on the PTR testing, doesn't change regardless if you have things like Gift of the Celestials. Gift of the Celestials is going to reduce the cooldown, lower cooldown, more Celestials, more Cocoons, more Absorbs. We'll see if that's going to persist in 10.07 because this is based on my PTR testing. So Mistweaver in my eyes is going to rise, and I think it's going to rise even more in 10.1. And I think when 10.1 hits, there's going to be a lot of people who might look at Mistweaver Monk as a possible choice for their new main, which is only a good thing because Mistweaver Monk community is relatively sparse when you compare it to other healers. Now let's go to Holy Paladin. And honestly, the Holy Paladin changes, there is literally pages and pages of changes, and honestly, reading through all of them can be pretty daunting because, how do I say, I think Holy Paladin has been hit in the crosshairs of the Retribution Paladin rework, and the Retribution Paladin rework is extremely severe that they kind of altered the class tree and the spec tree for Holy, and I'm not sure how to feel about all of these changes. In this video, I'm going to cover some of the bigger changes. I'm not going to talk about all the smaller things, but Retribution Aura has been redesigned, so I think a lot of the raiding guilds might look at this and they might ask, hey, maybe we should bring multiple paladins in our raid, one for Red Aura and one for Devotion Aura. Retribution Aura is going to provide us with a little bit of a boost in terms of damage and healing, depending on the fight, depending on how hard the fight hits and things like that. And we'll have Devo Aura for that damage reduction. We'll get the best of both worlds. But we'll have to see how that's going to be balanced. We'll have to see whether that's going to be a viable option. It is all based on how they're going to tune these new talents. So outside of that, the reworking of Dusk and Dawn, and now you need to cast 3 Holy Power generating abilities in order to activate this. There were quite a few bugs in PTR with this, but I think they've been somewhat fixed, and there has been quite a few changes in terms of what buffs you're getting from Off Dusk and Dawn. So again, really hard to make a proper judgment here because I generally believe that the Paladin or even Holy Paladin class is going to receive significant, or how they say, they're going to get tuning even after patch 10.07, because I don't think Blizzard has tested enough of Paladin changes so far. I think they're going to be doing a lot of tuning coming into patch 10.1, and I think at 10.1 it's when Holy Paladin is going to be, how do I say, finished, but that is just my kind of tinfoil analysis. And then you'll see some specific class tree talents like Sanctified Blades, which honestly seems pretty overpowered in terms of how much mitigation and damage reduction and survivability you're getting from this class tree talent alone. Again, you might question and ask yourself, do we need talents that seem to be almost mandatory? Should they just be given as default or something along those lines? But I guess they're introducing that. And then there's quite a few quality of life talent changes being introduced, like Crusader's Reprieve, which increases the range of your Crusader strikes and a few other things. And it sounds really nice on paper, and I think it plays really nice, but you have to ask yourself, is that really going to increase the power of my Holy Paladin coming into raids and Mythic Plus? It's going to make it more fun to play, but it's not as significant as people make it out to be. And I think that kind of summarizes the Holy Paladin feel for me. I think a lot of the changes have to do more with Retribution Paladin rather than Holy Paladin. I think a lot of the class tree talents that are being introduced, some of them feel okay, some of them feel almost unnecessary, and some of them feel like a nice quality of life improvements. They're also changing, how do I say, they're moving Divine Toll into their class tree. So I think there is a lot of, how do I say, a lot of these things are not as exciting as I initially anticipated. I think it's all dependent on the tuning of the class. For all you know, right before 10.07 hits or 10.1 hits, they might be like, hey, we're just gonna give Holy Paladins extra 5% damage and healing just to help out with meta perception and things like that. And that could be possibly more impactful than all of these pages and pages of changes that are affecting Holy Paladin. So now let's go to some lesser changes, and that is going to include Holy Priest. Now, Discipline Priest didn't really receive anything, so this is all the priests are getting. There are buffs to some of the talents that might be perceived as dead talents, and I agree with this. I think Blizzard should alter the power of talents that no one really chooses. For example, Divine Images. The RNG element of Divine Images is being reduced or eliminated, making this talent a lot more appealing. And on top of that, they're buffing, or how do I say, buffing Lightwell by multiple different ways in terms of cooldown reduction, in terms of healing. And again, a lot of these talents were never picked both in raids and Mythic Plus. For example, in Mythic Plus, you'll probably be running Lightweaver and Divine Word combo because it just works for Mythic Plus content a lot more. We'll have to see how these talents are going to alter Holy Priest in terms of Mythic Plus and raids, but I agree with the fact that Blizzard is buffing talents that no one are choosing, but I do think that Blizzard needed to buff Holy Priest damage a lot more, especially when it comes to that Mythic Plus environment, because they just cannot compete with Discipline Priest at this point. And then some other changes, again, very minor changes happening to Restoration Druid. Resto Druid is getting, again, Protector of the Pack. There's been a lot of shenanigans happening with Protector of the Pack over the last couple of patches in terms of the power of Protector of the Pack was severely nerfed because its synergy with a lot of other talents and a lot of other, how do I say, elements of the class were removed. So now they're rebuffing Protector of the Pack to, again, the cap a little bit more, so it should feel a little bit better. I think this is going to be only a good thing for Resto Druids running both in raids and Mythic Plus. And there's been some reordering of talents, and again, I'm not going to go through the reordering because I did try out a couple of talent builds for Mythic Plus and a couple of talent builds for raids. I think the biggest and most interesting fact is that Deep Focus, or if you remember, Draft of Deep Focus, is making a comeback in patch 10.07. I think there's going to be a lot of Resto Druids, especially in Mythic Plus environment, who might want to test that out. And now let's talk about Preservation of Evoker. And I'm not going to talk too much about Evoker nerfs and changes here because I made multiple videos about this, but Evoker is by far the biggest loser when it comes to changes in patch 10.07. Now, I think the nerfs are going to be way more impactful for raiding Preservation of Evokers than Mythic Plus, but I still consider Evoker to be a pretty solid, if not top tier healer both in Mythic Plus and raids even after these nerfs. But the fact that Blizzard is not only reducing the HPS of Preservation of Evokers, which I agree because Evokers or Preservation of Evoker healing output in raids, it's head and shoulders above everyone else, but they're also changing the gameplay and possibly making it a little bit clunkier. And again, I'm not fully, how do I say, I don't think this is the correct way to approach the nerfs to Evoker. A lot of people are going to be upset about Resonating Spheres now applies echoes to first 4 targets to the 6 targets, which means a lot less echoes throughout the duration of a boss fight or something along those lines when it comes to raiding. And then you look at things like, hey, when Lifebind is applied through a lower value echo with Temporal Anomaly, its healing value is reduced to match the value of echo, which basically means that when you're applying or preparing for that ramp for Emerald Communion, you're trying to get as many echoes out there as possible, maybe possibly through your not possibly, but definitely through your temporal anomaly, you're then usually going to be pressing Verdant Embrace, which is going to apply life bind to all the people that have echoes. But the life bind that is applied to people who have echo from temporal anomaly, the transfer is going to be severely weakened when compared to patch 10.0.5, which means that your Emerald Communion 3-minute cooldown is going to feel a lot less impactful. And in my eyes, that made Preservation of Evoker a lot more fun in raid situations. And again, this change is really upsetting change in terms of the gameplay. I don't care about the loss of HPS. I think Preservation of Evoker needed to be nerfed to be brought back in line to a lot of other healers, but the change of gameplay is only making this a lot less interesting. And again, the same kind of analysis can be applied to Golden Hour in terms of the value of Golden Hour when it's applied through Temporal Anomaly Echoes or whether it's applied through normal echoes. So I think there's a lot of things to be upset about when it comes to Preservation of Evoker, but I think these nerfs are not going to be that significant when it comes to Mythic Plus environment. I think a lot of Preservation of Evokers might be looking at something like Nosdormu's teachings as a way to kind of alleviate these nerfs. And I'm all for that. We'll have to see if there's going to be possible new builds emerging. Again, I'm not saying anything in this video, but generally speaking, Evoker, severe nerfs when it comes to raids, relative nerfs when it comes to Mythic Plus, but still one of the top tier healers. So now let's go to my Mythic Plus predictions for patch 10.0.7. We're not looking at 10.1 here because, again, there's a lot of, how do I say, in 10.1 there's going to be item level reset, there's going to be quite a few changes in terms of, again, tier sets have been announced. I think people are going to be a lot more willing to re-roll their class when it comes to 10.1 because everything's kind of fresh. So I think, again, there's positive changes happening to Mistweaver Monk in 10.1. I think a lot of people are looking at Mistweaver Monk in 10.1 as a viable main. But in 10.07, I still think things like, again, Preservation of Evoker, I still think is going to be an S tier healer in Mythic Plus. I don't think we will have to re-roll from Preservation of Evoker if you're playing right now. I do think there's going to be, again, the nerfs that are happening to Preservation of Evoker. You're going to be doing less healing, but at the end of the day, you have alternating talents that can also be used. Things like Nosdormu's teachings, I think they can be quite interesting. And I generally believe that the damage of Preservation of Evoker, the healing Preservation of Evoker, and the fact that they provide Bloodlust is a huge boon to the class. I think the gap is going to be bridged, but I think it's a huge boon to the class. I think that Restoration Druid might be a better option, or again, I still think Resto Druid is going to be an S tier healer. I think a lot of people are still going to be picking Resto Druids. They're not getting buffs or nerfs right now in 10.07. Again, depending on how you see it, but again, they are getting things like Protect of the Pack. That's going to be a little bit better. They are getting things like Draft, again, new talents that you might check out. But at the end of the day, Resto Druid, decent damage. You have to really work for damage as Restoration Druid. Preservation of Evoker damage is a lot better than Resto Druid, but Resto Druid can do really good damage, especially if you have the DPS trinkets, because you can have DPS trinkets. You can use, again, things like the Flame, Helm. There's a lot of ways to boost your DPS as Resto Druid, but you have to work for it, and your healing is pretty good. And the fact that you provide, again, Mark of the Wild, the Druid buff is absolutely insane in Mythic Plus environments, and you kind of have to have it. And the fact that they provide battle res is also a good thing. So I do think that the two classes that have already been strong in 10.05 and throughout Dragonflight, they're still going to be strong in 10.07. Now, what's happening to the other classes? I genuinely believe that Resto Shaman is going to be high A tier and possibly battling with Preservation of Evoker. Maybe I'm overdosing on copium or hopium or whatever, but I genuinely believe because Resto Shaman provides Bloodlust, Preservation of Evoker provides Bloodlust. I think a lot of the groups that need that Bloodlust in their group composition, they'll be looking at these two healers. And I think the most, how do I say, some of the most exciting changes that are happening to a class in 10.07 are for Restoration Shaman. They're getting multiple new talents. Tidebringer looks absolutely insane. The fact that you are getting, again, Cloudburst interaction with AG, that seems really interesting. You're getting more freed up talent points because, again, improved Lightning Bolt. You don't need to put a point in Water Shield. That's baseline. You don't have Call of Thunder anymore. It's baseline. There's a lot of positivity here. And then Earth Shield giving 6% damage reduction on yourself, depending if you have Elemental Orbit talent or on your tank. That seems really nice. I think, generally speaking, Resto Shaman damage, even though Acid Rain is getting nerfed, Restoration Shaman damage is going to be still very strong. I think their healing is getting boosted. Again, don't forget, 8% overall healing increase. That's pretty significant. And on top of that, you provide a lot of utility, things like Purge. Again, you look at Decurse and things like, you know, Temple of Jade Serpent. I think Resto Shaman is going to climb. I think it's going to be high A tier, possibly battling with Preservation of Evoker. Outside of that, again, I think Mistweaver Monk, a lot of people don't play Mistweaver Monk. It's one of the least played classes out there. I think you can have a really good time as Mistweaver Monk. Again, the amount of damage that you provide as a monk, a lot of people overlook this, but the DPS of Monk is actually really, really strong. The healing that you can do if you know how to play your monk can also be strong. The fact that Shaylon's gift can now be, again, we'll have to see how many people are going to be picking up the talent, but it can be a really good group-wide heal. I think that's only a good thing. You're also getting Chi Cocoon every time you use your Celestials, Red Crane or Yulon, and I think that's also interesting. So I think the fact that very few people play Mistweaver Monk, I think sub-creation data is going to be very poor for them, but in my opinion, you can have a really good time as a monk. I think a lot of healers are going to be in A tier. I think you're going to have something like Holy Paladin. Again, the choices here, it really depends. I think they're all going to be, a lot of them are going to be A tier. Again, Holy Paladin, I'm not really making a comment here because I think Holy Paladin changes are more to do with Retribution rework than anything else. There has been changes to Red Aura. I think that's going to be more significant in raid situations because maybe people are going to thinking about bringing multiple Paladins. That's not going to be hard because everyone, including your grandmother, are going to be playing Retribution Paladin after the rework. But in terms of the talent changes of Dusk of Dawn, some of the quality of life improvements, in terms of sanctified plates, in terms of survivability, I don't know what to think of them. I still think Holy Paladin can be a really good healer in terms of Mythic Plus and raids, but I think a flat 5% healing increase and damage increase could also have really big potential in terms of trying to balance them out. But I think Holy Paladin can still stay in A tier. Then I'll probably think Discipline Priest as well. Discipline Priest is getting like literally no changes coming into 10.07. I think the rework that happened to Discipline Priest made them a lot more viable because their damage is strong, their healing is strong, at the bubbles and absorbs and things like that. I think Discipline Priest is in a decent position, but I think Blizzard is severely scared of making Discipline Priest OP. I think their #1 fear is that Discipline Priests are going to be really strong and everyone's going to reroll. Because there has been expansions where Discipline Priests were absolutely insanely powerful and Blizzard would nerf them instantly, or how do you say, they wouldn't nerf them instantly, but in the last couple expansions, they didn't allow Discipline to be all that overpowered. And if they were, they would nerf them the next patch. So I'm not holding my breath. And I think Holy Priest in Mythic Plus, I still think it's probably going to be the last healer, the worst healer, because purely their damage is just not there. I think when you compare Discipline Priest to Holy Priest, Discipline Priest is head and shoulders ahead of Holy Priest, and I think the only reason to play Holy Priest in Mythic Plus right now is because it is a very simplistic healer. Again, simple healers can still take time to master, but most of the times if you're doing a high Mythic Plus, you'll be asked to swap to Discipline Priest, at least in Mythic Plus environment. So I think Holy Priest is getting buffs. We'll have to see if those talents, Divine Images and Lightwell, are going to be impactful. I think they're going to be more impactful in raids and Mythic Plus, but we'll have to see. And a big disclaimer before I move on to the raiding section. There is a big advantage when it comes to 5-man dungeons. The utility that you bring as a healer. A lot of the times having Bloodlust, again, Resto, Shaman and Preservation Evoker, that's a big boon to your invite potential. The fact that Mark of the Wild is one of the strongest group buffs you can provide is also a huge boon to Druids in general. And then you look at things like, for example, Mistweaver Monk and Holy Paladin, they could provide more damage and more healing than Resto Shaman, but that wouldn't matter because if you need Bloodlust, you're gonna invite Resto Shaman. The group's or healer's potential is going to be depending on those big group-wide buffs that they bring. So this is why I think the Resto Shaman could almost climb to S tier potential because they provide Bloodlust. But they are going to battle with Preservation Evoker because both of these classes provide Bloodlust. This is why I feel sorry for some of these classes. For example, Priest might not provide huge utility, but they do provide PI, which can also be impactful, but a lot of groups might not be like, hey, in order to complete this dungeon, we need power infusion. They might not be like that. They'd be much more inclined towards that Bloodlust, towards that maybe Battle Res, even Engineering Battle Res exists. Having one pure Battle Res class can also be strong, and having good group buffs is also very important. This is a lot less evident when it comes to something like raids, because there's going to be a lot more classes who bring the same utility. When it comes to raiding, this is 10.05 information. So again, no big surprise here. This is 99 percentile in terms of mythic raids, mythic vault incarnates, Preservation Evoker, head and shoulder ahead of everyone else. Not a big surprise. They got a nerf. They got like a 5% nerf a while ago. Didn't really do anything. You can see Restoration Druids doing good HPS. You can see Mistweaver Monks doing good HPS. What's going to happen? In my eyes, in 10.07, Preservation Evoker HPS is going to be a lot lower. I think Preservation Evoker is going to be hanging in there with these three guys right here. I think they're all going to be very close to each other. I think Evoker is still going to be a very strong healer, especially if you're doing Mythic Razagate. Maybe not Mythic Razagate that much, but Time Spiral is really strong. Rescue is still relatively strong if you kind of mess up phase 1, but I still think Preservation Evoker is going to be a top tier raid healer. I still think Preservation Evoker is going to be a top tier Mythic Plus healer, but the gap is going to be severely bridged. There is possibility that some of these healers right here might overtake or become the new HPS kings. I think there's a high possibility of that happening. I think the fact that Preservation Evoker gameplay is going to feel a lot less rewarding is bigger issue that Preservation Evoker's HPS is lower. I'm not an advocate of a certain healer class being 10, 5, 15% ahead of everyone else. I don't think that's good game design, but I just don't like the gameplay changes that are happening. So Evoker is going to dip, and I think it's going to hang around with all of these. I think Restoration Shaman is going to climb a little bit. They are nerfing Wellsprings, and I think the Wellspring nerf, it's not really relevant in Mythic Plus. You're not running Wellsprings in Mythic Plus. You are running Wellsprings in raid situations, and that is getting nerfed by 30%, but you're still getting that 8% overall healing boost, which I think is going to bring them up. I think Holy Priest, again, we'll see if those talents are going to be impactful enough in order to be picked up in terms of Divine Images, in terms of Lightwell. If they are, you might see a little bit of a rise as well. Holy Paladin, honestly, I have no idea right now, depending on tuning. I think they're going to stay somewhat similar, but maybe there's going to be a lot more guilds who will say, hey, let's bring 2 Paladins, one for Retribution Aura to increase our overall damage and healing. It might be very minor, but they might still want to do that, and one Holy Paladin for Devo Aura for that damage reduction. So we're getting the best of both worlds. That could very much happen, depending on, again, depending if you're doing farm content or progression content, because I'm imagining the Retribution Aura contribution is going to be a lot more impactful if you're doing progression. And then you have Discipline Priest, who's getting like literally no changes, and they're going to stay somewhere similar to where they are. So quite a bit of reshuffling happening in 10.07, both when it comes to raid and Mythic Plus. Again, I don't think Mythic Plus changes are going to be impactful enough for, again, things like Resto Druid swapping to Resto Shamans, or Preservation Evoker swapping to Resto Shamans. I don't think a fully geared Preservation Evoker who has all the best trinkets, all the best rings, who's been playing Evoker since the start of Dragonflight is going to be inclined to swap to Resto Shaman in order to push Mythic Plus. That's not going to happen. They're going to do well with the current class that they have. So I think the sub-creation data is going to be very similar to what it is in 10.05, but I think the gap is going to be completely closed. I think you could make certain arguments for some of these healers climbing into S tier, and in 10.01, I think there's going to be a huge amount of players trying out new classes, and I think the meta is going to be a lot different. In raiding, again, we'll have to wait for the tier sets. I've seen some of the tier sets. For example, right now, the tier set for Resto Druid looks insanely strong. That there's no way that's going to go live, but I don't want to talk too much about 10.1. I think the HPS of healers in raid is going to be a lot closer, and I think there's going to be certain healers that, again, their utility is going to carry them, but the domination of Preservation Evoker in raid, it's over in my opinion, and you're going to be a lot closer to other healers. Let me know how you feel about this video. I didn't want to go too long here, but let me know, are you excited for 10.07? Or are you waiting for that 10.1? Because the tier sets, the class changes, they're all looking pretty spicy. Let me know how you feel about this, and I'll see you in my next video.